What's up, you guys? This is your girl Dragon, and I hope you guys are having an amazing day. It is time for another tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to teach you guys how to make a hunters versus runners map, the most important map for Halloween. Let's go ahead and check it out. Alright, you guys, let's go ahead and get right into it. This tutorial today was made especially for Chuck Wood. 4 days ago he posted under the video that's called How to Spawn by Teams. You can guys, if you need to learn how to do that, I'll post that link for you down in the chat. But his question states, I'm having a problem where there's only one player with one spawn pad on team 2, but on team 1 there's like 6 spawn pads and there's 2 players that spawn on team 2. So he did inform me that he's making a hunters versus runners type of game format. So that's what we're going to go through today. I'm going to teach you guys how to make a hunters versus runners game based upon the premises that he would like to do it, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it right now. So let's go ahead and get started and check it out. Alright, step 1. Let's first go over all of the devices you're going to need to do the setup. Again, this is a more simplistic version for this setup, and hopefully I get a chance to do something a little bit more complex down the road. But let's go ahead and I'll go through each one of these for you guys, and then I'm going to go and show you guys the setup. Alright, so let's start off with teleporters. You're going to need one for your hunter, and then however many you need for your runners. So for example, it looks like Chuck says he's going to have about 7 players on his map, so he'll have 1 for the hunter and he'll have 6 for the runners. I'm going to show you guys what the channels are here in a little bit after we go through each device that you need. Each of these teleporters are going to be set to a different channel and specifically set to a different team. That way that team only transports to that teleporter. Alright, so next up you're going to need some HUD message devices, and these are very important. It can let you know when your devices are sending to the right channels, if they are working, plus it lets your players know what's going on. So they're very, very helpful, and again we'll go through those settings here once we check out the setup. Alright, next up is the player counter. Again, you can omit this if you like. It's completely personal preference. You can always use just a timer and a class selector just to switch it. However, if you have a game where you just don't want it to start if there's only one player, then this is going to be so beneficial for you because it's going to count the players, and if there's not enough players, the game won't start. So if that's something you want to do, we're going to definitely be including that in this tutorial, and I hope it helps you along. We have the timer device, and this will give you some space before the class selectors switch the teams, so this is very good to have. You're going to need some team settings and inventory devices. You see I have one here for global, one for the hunter, and one for the runner. These are very, very helpful because you can customize each team separately, and it proves to be extremely useful. Last but not least, we have the class selector devices, and you see I already have them named here. You're going to need a global team, one for the hunter, and one for the runner. So just keep that in mind, because when the players spawn in, you want them to be on a global team before they're switched, and I'm going to show you guys the settings on that. Alright, now that we know all the devices that you guys need, we're going to go ahead and get into the setup, check out the channels, and see how this system works. Let's go. Alright, the setup. It is definitely a little cozy in here. No worries, we got everything we need. We got our HUD message devices. We have our timer device, our class selectors. That one there's for the global. And these ones here are for the team. One is set to the hunter, the others are set to the runners. So this example is an example for a 4-player map. Of course, if you're going to have 6, you just add 2 more. Alright, let's go ahead and jump into the channels. Alright, starting first with your spawn pads, and you know that wasn't over there in the other mechanic room, no worries, but you're definitely going to need some spawn pads, of course. These spawn pads are set to enable on phase always, player team any, player class any, there's no priority group, and this is important, you want to use this island start. I have this set to a channel, When the player is spawned, transmit on channel 500. Every spawn pad is set to this channel, and this is going to help put everything else in motion once they spawn in. Want some good vibes for life? Why not drop a sub? That way you won't miss any more tutorials coming up in the future. Alright, let's go. Alright, so the player counted device. So as you see, I have it strategically placed here to where I expect the players to stand. You can always increase the volume, do whatever you like, depending on the game mode that you're making. Alright, so let's look at those options. We got compare player count, equal or more. So that basically means here, if it's equal to 1 or more, then it's going to complete. If it's less than, it will not send a signal. For this test, since it's just me, we're having a 1. But for, let's see here, you're going to want to put, of course, 6 players before the timer starts. Or you want to do at least, it's always safe to do at least 2 players. You want at least 2 players in a game before it starts. So you see here, it's just counting me. It needs 2. It's on red. That means that that's a failure. It's not going to start the game. It's not going to start the count. So I'm going to switch it back to 1 for this tutorial here. Alright, and then let's see here. Compare a game start, I have no, because this is going to be enabled via a channel, and we don't want it to start as soon as the game starts, because that will then probably start the timer too early, and then players will be like, teleported everywhere and they won't know what's going on. Compare on count change. You want this to be set to yes. Transmit on player counted or removed every single time. Transmit for on compare result change. You want to use last instigator. The counted team can be any. The invert team selection is off. The counted class is any. The invert class selection is off. Enabled on phase always. Of course, this is personal preference. You can do gameplay only. The info panel is not visible for this tutorial, but if you do want it, you can definitely have it by switching it to on. Icon scale, of course, personal preference. And you can pick whatever icon color you like. Now I'm using a zone, of course. The zone shape is a box. Of course, you can pick cylinder or box. And this is also important. So you want to select how long you want them to be inside the zone before it starts to count. I have it at 4 seconds. So they literally have to stand in here 4 seconds before it starts to count. If they don't stand in there 4 seconds and they're moving, then it won't start to count. Again, this is personal preference on how you have your game set up. So try to use that as effectively as possible. I'm quite sure it's extremely beneficial. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the channels. So this is going to be enabled when receiving from 500, disabled from 1, and this is the most important here. When the count succeeds, you're going to transmit on 10. So I have it set to 10. Again, any channel that works for you. If you're working with groups, you know what to do. Everything else is set to no channel. All right, so let's see what's connected to 10. When this counts a successful number, it's going to start the timer. So let's take a look at those settings. So the timer settings, let's check it out. Let's see here. I have it set to a duration of 10 seconds. And you can put in the timer name, that way you know what it's for. It's going to be counting down. It will not start when the game starts. You don't want that. The activating team can be any, because this is activated via a channel, so it doesn't quite matter. This applies to everyone. And you want the result to be, of course, a success. And when it completes, you want it to reset. You can choose if you want it visible during the game or not. For testing purposes, we have it visible. And then select whatever color you want. While the timer is running, you can go ahead and type in what you like as well. And let's just call it selecting. Alright, there you go. Alright, showing on HUD, I have it for yes. And timer label text style. Again, this is personal choice. Extra large. Don't want to save this timer. There's no need to do that. No auto save is required. Auto load is on. Urgency mode time is never, because you don't need that for this type of game. Audio effects is personal choice. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. We don't really quite need that. If instigating player is not present, you're going to pick a random player. And start when receiving from 10. Everything else is no channel except for on success. On success is going to transmit on 7, and that's connected to the class selected devices. So let's check those out. Alright, so the class selected devices. So let's see, let's start with the global one because it's like the most important one. Let's go ahead and check out those channels. So we're not going to be actually switching to a class, but we're going to be switching the team. And the global team is going to be Team 1. So as soon as they spawn in, I want them to switch to Team 1. Activating team is going to be any, and the time to switch is instant. I don't want any type of delay on this because it needs to be right away when the game starts. Restore health and shields on switch. You can set this to yes, but it really doesn't matter because when they come in, they're going to have full health and shields. Let's see here. Everything else, we got volume visible in game off, visible during game off, any color you want because it doesn't quite matter. This is going to be invisible. They won't see it. And enable during game phase is gameplay only. You can turn the activation audio off and the zone off. And effects as well, it's not really needed. It's good to see this. Let's say you're testing, if you want to make sure it's actually activating, you can have this on and leave it on, and then once you have a successful test, you can turn it off. But let's go ahead and just turn it off for now. And as you see, it's set to change player to team when receiving from 500, which is the same channel that they're going to be spawning on. So when they spawn, it's going to transmit to 500, and it's going to switch them to Team 1, which is the global team. Next up, we have the class selectors for the hunter and all the runners. So let's first check out the hunter. So they all kind of work the same. Alright, they're going to be enabled when receiving from 10. And keep in mind, 10 is when the timer starts. So when the game starts, these are not going to be active. They're going to be disabled because you don't want them to switch until the timer starts and the timer is successful, and then it's going to switch these devices on. Alright, so enable when receiving from 10, disable from 500 because when they're spawning in, you don't want it to be working. Change player to team when receiving from 7. So that's the channel that the timer is going to be transmitting on. So when it succeeds, it transmits on 7. And then when the team is switched, transmits to 26. So that's connected to our teleporter, and I'll show you guys that here in a bit. The team it's going to switch to is Team 2. So they're going to be going from Team 1 to Team 2 for the hunter. And then everything else, let me just go through this here, is pretty basic. You don't have to set a class. This part, you can keep it at class items only. You can change the size of the volume if you like. Choose if you want it to be visible or not. And so on. Now the runners. The runners are very similar to the hunter. The only exception is the team, right? It's still going to be enabled on 10, disabled on 500, and they're going to switch at the same time the timer goes down and is successful at 7. And they're going to be, let's see here, transferred to 27, right? Because that's the teleporter for the runners. Right, so you see 27, 27. Right, now that that's all set up, let's go ahead and check out those team inventory and settings devices. So let's check out the channels for the team settings and inventory. So this is the global team. I have it set to Team 1. So when they come in, they're going to be named travelers. Everything else like team color, default class identifier, grant items and respawn, that is all set to the default settings because it's not really going to be required. They're not going to be able to do much when they spawn in because the game hasn't started yet. When looking at the hunter, you see it's set to team 2. There is a team color and there's no default class identifier. If you are going to be designating a class, make sure you put this here as well. Very important. And of course, everything else is the default settings and no channels required. Next up is the runners, and of course it reflects almost the same as the hunters with the exception of the team. You're going to make sure that's set to team 3. Now that we got that out the way, let's go ahead and check out those teleporters. Alright, here we are in a spooky forest where the runners will be spawned. And I have the teleporter way back here. So make sure it's not set on a group. It's enabled during all or gameplay only, whichever you feel works best for you. And the team for the runners is 3. This is also very important. If you don't set this and they spawn in, they will probably spawn in the air or not spawn in all if this is not set. So make sure that you set this to the team. Everything else is on default. Some important things as well. You want to make sure the player is facing the teleporter direction. You don't want to conserve the momentum. It's personal choice depending on how you're setting up your map. And of course all these are personal choice. I have them set to no. Let's look at the channels. So teleport to and receive from 27. So as you see, when the classes or the teams are switched, it's going to transmit on 27 and transport them here. All other channels are set to no channels with the exception of when teleported to transmit on 29. This is going to alert the head message device and send a message to your player letting them know that they are now the runners. Alright, the hunter teleporter is very similar on the setup here, except it's going to be set to team 2. The channel is 26, and when teleported to transmit on 28. Again, they're going to get a message saying you are the hunter. Right, lastly, I want to say if you do run into some issues, you might have to enable and disable certain devices just to make sure they're not active when the players are transported. That could be, let's see here, your clock. So you can disable it on the same channel that it's going to be transmitting on when it's successful. And your player counter device, again, you can disable that on 7, the same channel where your timer is going to be sending that successful signal. Alright, so there you go. I do hope this has helped you out. I hope it wasn't too fast. I know it's a lot of devices just to do a really simple type of game mode, but I hope this can get you started and get you set on your way. Alright, you guys, those are all the elements you need to create a hunters versus runners game mode. And what we're going to do now is we're going to run a playtest so you guys can see the system working in action. Alright, let's do it. All right, that was super awesome. It's always great when a playtest works exactly as it should. But of course there could be issues, don't worry. If you do have issues, just go ahead and post a comment below. Let me know what's going on and let's try to figure it out. If this tutorial has helped you out, please let me know in the comments below. Plus, share it with a friend. If you do, that would be awesome. All right, that's gonna do it for this tutorial. Thank you guys for hanging in with me. I do hope it helps. And I can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye.